think I have to be maybe closer to the mic. Is that good? What about if I speak in español? Está mejor si hablo español para practicarlo, ¿no? So it's great to hear all this conversation previous to this presentation. You know, Emily talking about, you know, migratory connectivity, you know, all the research about, you know, how the American woodcock migrates regionally here. And at Audubon chapter of Minneapolis, you know, we're trying to fulfill that goal of being a leader on promoting conservation. And we think, you know, this migration partners effort, which I'm the chair of that committee, kind of brings together all these things that we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get all the work of, you know, these great researchers that are doing in the field, but how do we connect that to ultimately the people that, you know, live in those areas? This is a partnership between, I'm going to skip some of these. It's a partnership between you know, the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis and the MOU organization in Honduras, which is called Aves Honduras. So let's if you haven't been in this part of the world, Honduras is right in Central America, about 2,000 miles. If you get on a plane, there is a flight that leaves here at 5:30 in the morning, and you go through Atlanta, and you'll be at 1 p.m., you're going to be in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. It's a country with a lot of mountains, a very mountainous country, and with, you know, a variety of habitats. So, you know, right now this program is focused on supporting the efforts of the folks at Aves Honduras in a specific area, the Uyuca Biological Reserve, which is kind of like in the south central part of the country. San Pedro Sula is here in the north coast, and then Tegucigalpa, you should learn that word, Tegucigalpa. It's the capital city of Honduras, and this is like just a few minutes away from the capital city of Honduras, the Uyuca Biological Reserve. Honduras, like you might have heard, you know, we have a lot of social, political, economic challenges. We just had our election last Sunday, and you know, we elected the first female president, Xiomara Castro, in elections that were, you know, more or less fair, right? In 2009, we had a coup in 2009, and the folks who did the coup had been in power for the last 12 years, and the opposition won the election with an alliance of a group of people. So good news for the stability of the country and some of the efforts of conservation there. So people ask, so what do these places have in common, right? I do some birding here in the winter. I like to do snowshoeing. And, you know, when I tell my friends down in Honduras, I show them the snowshoes, they just can't believe what is this for. So what is places that look like this have in common with places that look like this, right? So we find when I'm out there in the field birding, you know, sometimes, you know, folks, you know, miss the global picture of what's happening. You know, the birds, the golden-winged warblers that we see here, you know, the wood thrush, you know, spend some time in places like Honduras, right? And if the habitat there is in trouble, those species are in trouble. So, you know, a lot of the presenters talk about the concept of migratory connectivity, right? And Honduras is, you know, one of the places that, you know, a lot of the species go through. Some of them go all the way through South America. So, and, you know, when we think about the size of these countries, right, we look at the size of Honduras, and then when they are wintering, you know, the land, right, it gets a lot reduced. So the density of the species there, you know, the protection of some of those habitats become even more and more important. So this project that we have, you know, between the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis, Aves Honduras, which is the Honduran Ornithology Association, and the Institute for Bird Populations, which, you know, you're familiar with, you know, their protocols. They have these programs called MAPS in North America, and then they have the MOSI program, which basically MOSI stands for, El Monitoreo de Sobrevivencia Invernal. That's the Spanish for the Monitoring Over Winter Survival Station. So with, the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis here, we're supporting part of the funding to run a MOSI station in the Uyuca Biological Reserve. Aves Honduras is providing the biologists that, certify banders that understand the IBP protocols to do running the MOSI station. And Zamorano University is a very good university there in Honduras that focuses on agriculture, but also has a program on sustainable development. So it's a great partnership, and this program we have the different objectives. Of course, at the core of the program is promote this bird research and monitoring, but for me, the most important part is, how do we connect these communities of folks of Minnesota and Honduras? We're working with the Minneapolis public school system and a school in Honduras. We're having some meetings this winter about doing some virtual exchanges for, between elementary, maybe some middle schools, between the Minneapolis public school and the Honduran Zamorano schools that are located in the region. And also, promote more exchanges, perhaps, put in the list of your travel Honduras, because it's a great bird and destination. It's a country with about, 800 species of birds. I know a lot of the folks get exposed here to the bad news of Honduras, but there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work there. Aves Honduras and the research that we have here at Roselvy, has been doing a lot of good work there on different kind of areas. So we do, like I say, at the core of the program is the MOSI station, right? That's the part where we're, we are funding part of the cost of running that. Also part of the funding allowing Aves Honduras to bring some interns to build some local capacity there, because that's one of the challenges in these countries, right? We don't have as many certified banders. We don't have as many biologists working on bird or conservation-related topics. But also, is this connection? Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I casually put on my Facebook page, hey, I'm going to Honduras. If you have if you're gonna change binoculars, would you donate those and I'll take them to Honduras? And I got all these binoculars that I couldn't pack in my bag. So, I took like 16 or 20 pairs to a place in Honduras. And, when I go and visit my parents, I take 1 or 2 days to do some volunteer and train, do some field work, workshops for the kids. Now, Aves Honduras has been very successful about, it's an organization that is only 10 years. It's going to be 11 years old. So it's very young. But they grow, a lot of birding clubs in different parts of the region. About 14 birding clubs right now. And this is how they're able to reach out to different communities on different parts of Honduras. The good thing that I see there is I see a lot of young people in birding. There is a lot of great interest on birding. We might not have the logistics, we might not have the binoculars available, but we have a lot of the interest. So part of this program is, eventually to give them some of those tools to some of those groups to allow these type of activities. This was a group that with an alliance with a different organization that runs an orphanage. We were able to take a group of people birding. We did an overnight trip into this farm that does cacao farming, and also they're doing a lot of work improving the habitats of the birds there. So they do bird tours within the farm. So this program brings together that vision that people have been talking about here. How do we bring this scientific work? How do we translate that into the community? So hopefully we make this technology work here in Roselvy. I can move to the part that Roselvy will speak a little more about the MOSI station. So Roselvy, are you there?
Yes. Let me start sharing my screen, and please confirm.
So Roselvy is in Zamorano, in the Zamorano region of Honduras. Like a presenter.
I don't know how to do that.
Here, participants. Yeah. Okay. So you can now share your.
Yes.
Yes. We can see you and we can see the presentation. It's great.
Excellent, excellent.
And we can hear you well. And all these people speak Spanish, so you can do it in Spanish too.
Okay, thank you. Maybe it will be a combination of Spanish and English.
It's Minnesotan Spanish, so it's a different.
Okay, okay, super. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you to Minnesota Ornithologists Union for the opportunity to give this talk, to speak a little bit more about the work that we are doing here in Honduras at the Oyuca Biological Reserve. And as Wilmer mentioned before, MOSI is the Spanish acronym for Monitoring Overwinter Survival Program, a program which is administered by the Institute of Bird Populations, and is also a complementary program to another signature program of IBP, which I'm sure many of you are already well familiar with, the MAP program, which is the Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survival. So these two programs are complementary with each other, and basically the main purpose of these two programs is to better understand what is going on in the full annual cycle of each species that are being studied using these two programs. The Monitoring Overwinter Survival Program began in 1992 as a collaborative effort between public organizations as well as NGO and many bird banders across Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. These maps that you see in the right here illustrate all these MOSI stations that has been active during the last 4 years, according to the Institute for Bird Populations. And since the beginning, more than 250 bird banding stations have been active across 22 countries since during the nearly 30 years of the program. And as I mentioned before, the main purpose of the program is to investigate the spatial and habitat related variation in the non-breeding season, the physical condition and survivorship of migratory birds, to ultimately understand the proximate causes that are the main driving of population changes in neotropical migratory birds, with the purpose of guide the efforts for their management and the conservation of all these migratory species that we share with North American birds. IVP To do this, this program, IBP has delineated 15 regions as organizational units. This delineation of region is basically based in the Environmental Protection Agency level 1 ecoregions. And the Oyuka bird banding stations fall within the ecoregion known as Highland of Central America. There is only 4 other bird banding stations within this region, and all of those other 4 stations are located in Nicaragua. Okay. Oyuka, the mountain Oyuka, has been declared a biological reserve by the Honduran government since 1985, and is basically created to protect this very well-developed pine knot forest, as you can see in this image here, which was taken a couple of weeks ago. And beside the pine knot forest, the reserve also protect cloud forest in the highest part of the mountain. It's important to mention that the pine knot forest, which is being protected by this reserve, in collaboration between the Honduran government and Zamorano University, is protecting a very important habitat for many neotropical migrants that breed in the boreal forest, but spend all the winter time, between 5 and 6 months approximately, in this habitat. It is also the main winter habitat for this species, the golden cheek warbler, which, as you may know, breeds in Texas, but it spent at least 6 months of their life here in the pine knot forest. Is the main winter habitat, and this species is listed under the Endangered Species Act. Okay, but what do we do? How do we carry out this monitoring in Oyuka? Well, basically, we do this study during the 12th month of the year, and we implement the MOSI protocol, which consists in setting and opening mist nets within 12 hectares of a very similar type of forest. And as you can see in this image, the mist nets need to be more or less equally distributed throughout the 12 hectares. The data, the MOSI data, are collected basically between November and March during 25 hours of field work. While the mist nets are open, we visit mist net in a regular basis, and almost every hour or more often sometimes. And once that we find a bird in the mist net, we release and put it in an individual bird bag and transport these captured birds to the bird banding processing location, which is indicated in the Oyuka bird banding station as the yellow triangle in the figure. Once at the processing site, we give to every migratory bird, we give a lightweight number aluminum lead band, which is provided, or which are provided by the U.S. Geological Survey. And these bands are put in the right leg of each bird. And once that we had banded those birds, we proceed to collect several biometric data, which are listed here in the presentation. And as you can see, these are just standard data that are collected in any bird banding station. And a final component of our study is or consists of doing a bird survey. And these surveys are conducted using the transit protocol and are carried out simultaneously while the mismaps are open. And all the bird collected or detected during the survey are stored and submitted to the eBird database, while the data that we collect for the birds in the hand, those during the period of the MOSI period, which ran from November to March, as I mentioned before, all those data are shared with the Institute for Bird Population. We were lucky enough to run these bird banding stations during 3 consecutive years, starting in February 2010. And this effort was possible thanks to the collaborations between Salvanatura, a Salvadorian NGO, and the Zamorano Biodiversity Center. During those 3 consecutive years of work in Oyuca, we were able to capture 4,416 birds of 72 species, including 29 migratory species. And it's important to mention here that of those 29 neotropical migrants, 14 species were mentioned in the list of target species compiled by IVP. Here at your right, you had a Wilson warbler, a immature Wilson warbler that was captured in Oyuca. And at the background, you can see a little bit of the bird banding place. In this table, I am presenting the list of the 10 most commonly captured birds. And the photos from left to right correspond to each species. Let's say that this one, the first one is, for example, Chlorospingus, common Chlorospingus, or the scientific name is Chlorospingus fladopectus. On this list, I also like to highlight that a Wilson warbler, again here, is within the most commonly captured bird. So if somebody there is interested in studying this species on the winter ground, Oyuca would be a very good place to do it because it's very commonly captured. And it also is not just commonly captured during the winter time, but also during the migration period. We get sometimes more than 10 individuals during each pulse between April and May. Here I also like to highlight three other species, which is the green-breasted mountain jay, a hummingbird that is almost endemic to Honduras. It just barely goes into the western part of Nicaragua, but again, is a species very much restricted to Honduran mountains, as well as the azure-crowned hummingbird and a white-eared hummingbird. One feature that all these species share is that they are mostly resident and are very poorly known. Not very much has been published about them in the scientific literature. So all the data that we are collecting are quite relevant. And which bring me to the next slide of basically mentioning that what exactly are we doing with all these data that we are collecting? Well, so far we had several publications, including 2 monographs that had been written for birds of the world, and some of those species that are mentioned before, the green-breasted mountain jay and yellowish flycatcher, which are among our most commonly captured birds. We also published this short note in the Ornitología Neotropical about a hybrid hummingbird that we captured in the Uyuca Reserve. And we identify this bird as a hybrid because it shows intermediate features between two species that occur at the Uyuca Reserve and also in Honduras. One of them, Azure crowned hummingbird, was, I mentioned that before, it was in the most commonly captured bird in Uyuca. But the other species that we argue are the putative parents of this hummingbird is a Maryland hummingbird, a species that reach the southern part of this range, of this distribution range, more or less at the place where the Uyuca Reserve is located. And one of the field marks that make this bird to appear intermediate is, for example, the breast. An Azure crowned hummingbird, it has more white on the breast, while in the bird that we caught, the white was very much restricted. The blue that gives the name to, the blue in the crown that gives the name to the Azure crown was completely absent. And the tail pattern was actually a combination of the two species, Maryland hummingbird and Azure crowned hummingbird. And you can, we were able to confirm that the central rectors were a combination, a different combination of colors compared to the outer rectors. The outer rectors has more, or had more bronzy colors compared to the inner rectors, which is yeah, very unique or very definitive field marks to confirm that this was a hybrid hummingbird. But the data that we collect in Uyuca are also being used by other colleagues in North America. For example, here I showed this recent publication from the Wilson Journal of Ornithology, which talk about the mold strategies in 3 MPs. And this publication was possible thanks to all the data that are being collected through the MOSI stations in the neotropics. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the hummingbirds that we mentioned, that I mentioned before. In this graph, you can see that, for example, the yellow line of illustrate the capture rates for Azure crowned hummingbird, while the gray line illustrate the capture rates of white-eared hummingbird. And as you can see in the graph, those two species are not present year-round in the bird banding station, which in Excel is already providing new information about these species, right? We anticipate that they have local movements. They don't migrate like the neotropical migrants latitudinally, but they may, or they do show movements, altitudinal movements or local movements. The blue line in this graph illustrate the capture rates for the green-breasted martingale. And contrary to the other two species, you can see that this species is year-round in the bird banding site. And we suspect that these patterns are driven by the preferred flower for these two species. We specifically associate these patterns with Padicurea padifolia and Trumfeta speciosa. The first one is producing flowers mostly in April and May, which are the months where we capture most Azure crowned and white-eared hummingbirds. While the Trumfeta speciosa is flowering almost the entire year, and we suspect that the green-breasted martingale is mostly feeding in this bird and in this plant. However, these relationships have not been quantified. which is one of the main goals of our, or one of the main reasons that we have to go back to do bird monitoring at Oyuka, which brings me nicely to the next slide, which highlight the main goals of the program. Contribute to the monitoring overwinter survival program, monitor the avifauna of the pine knot forest in the Oyuka Reserve, collect basic life history data of poorly known resident species, including the study of hummingbird and plant interactions, train as well as train members of the of Aves Honduras, the NGO that Wilmer mentioned before, and the bird banding following all the principles highlighted by the American Ornithology, by the North American Banding Council. Thanks to the help of the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis, we were able to go back to Yucca to collect more data for the MOSI program. And we just started there. Basically, last week we went there to do the first pulse of this new round of monitoring in Oyuka. And we were lucky enough to count 15 migrant birds, including a wood thrush here in this photo and golden winged warbler, two species that, as Wilmer mentioned, breeds in North America and winter here in the pine knot forest. And as you may know, they are both listed under the, or are listed on the, as the species of conservation concern by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we were also able to capture and process in total 126 birds, including 36 hummingbirds and 75 other resident birds. To finalize, I would like to mention that the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis will need help to sustain this program, as Wilmer mentioned before, and not just only the MOSI program, but all other programs related to environmental education and training of all people interested in bird conservation here in Honduras. So I would like you to invite to donate through the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis, or even contact us with to volunteer ideas with activities that will support these programs. That is all what I had prepared. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer any question that you may have.
Thank you very much, Roselvy. And yeah, muchas gracias, Roselvy, and thanks to the MOU folks that figure out the technical stuff here to make, Roselvy is maybe, 20 minutes from the Tegucigalpa, the capital city, out there in the Zamorano Valley. So this is great that this worked out so well. So.
Excellent.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that.
Any questions that we might have? Dick's got
Yes.
the microphone. Are there any questions? We've got one.
Some of the earlier presentations dealt with collecting feather samples or blood samples. Would that be practical, of value, something that could be done in your area?
Roselvy, the question was if, in other efforts, people are doing collecting feathers samples. Is that something that has been done in that area?
It has been done. Certainly in Yucca, I believe that in the first 3 years of the project, we did collect some outer vectors of several species that were targeted by this program. I know that in El Salvador also, where we used to have bird banding sites, several bird banding sites, we collect feathers and we send in those feathers back to IVP for the Scene or Escape program, I believe. But right now in Oyuka, we are not collecting feathers, and maybe for the next mossy season is something that we can discuss with Stephen Albert.
All right, well,
Any other question? If no questions, I'll this program, this migration partners, like Roselvy say, IBP recommends that they do 5 months. Audubon, because of the importance of the data to the local folks there to collect, 1 year. So we're going to be doing a campaign next spring to, collect funds to keep up that work of having, right now we have funds for 1 year, but we want to keep this to be maybe a 3 or 5 year period so the data has, greater significance. So I'll encourage you to, go to the page of the chapter, or even, with MOU, we might have further conversation about how to collaborate to support this kind of program. So thank you very much for the invitation.
thanks so much.